Good morning, all, or happy lunchtime for myself, my friends in South Downs, and others of you living in the future. And welcome to Kal-bardr's Corner for this episode of Coffee with Cal. I am Baron Kal-bardr Gellir, Pan the Meridian Cross, Pan the Arctic Comic, Pan the Compostela, Pan the Palmer's Lantern, Defender of the West, and Reaper. Coming to you live from the Shire of Vulpine Reach here in the mountainous parts of Meridies. Today, I am joined by a modern-day falconer, at least by way of drone operation. A fantastic fighter, and I'm pretty sure still the baby knight of the West Kingdom. Welcome to Sir Titus Octavius Novellus Singenius. Morning, buddy.
Hey, Cal, how you doing? Morning.
Doing well, sir. The baby knight. I was so super excited to get to see you at your knighting and be there for that, and then also get to watch you give away your chain the next day, which was really funny to me. If you will introduce yourself, tell us about who you are and why you're in fact awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Hi. I'm Sir Singenius, baby knight of the West. I've been playing in the SCA since about 95 in Caid and then in the West. And for the past almost 10 years now or so, I've been using drones to cover the fighting wherever I can, wherever at events that will allow it. And I really think it's a great way to kind of share a view with people that you don't normally see. Being a war fighter, one of my favorite parts about the SA is war fighting, but was always challenged to capture that via video from the sidelines. And also, the spectators have somewhat of a limited view when they're there and they can only see on the side. They can't really see everything that's happening. So some years ago, I got a drone for Christmas and I saw the potential of what it could do. And so I think in about 2013, 2013 was the first year I brought one out to Great Western and was able to capture this view, this bird's eye view that I had never really seen before. And so I've been super excited to be able to do that and to travel to different events. I've been able to film at Great Western, at West on Tier, recently at Gulf Wars. And I think it's just a great way to share what we do with other people who might not otherwise see it. I think it reaches to a younger audience. It reaches to an audience that maybe isn't normally seeing SCA content. And so I think it's a great way to share what we do and really show the glory of what our fighters and our, all of our different people can do.
That was an amazing synopsis. I love that. You had it prepared. All right. So cool. I want to dive into that a little more. I want to get into some nitty gritty of sort of the history of that, or what your thoughts are.
Sure.
Before we do that, let's talk about our coffee, because this show is, of course, coffee themed. Today,
sure.
I have a cup of cinnamon vanilla, and don't harsh my vibe here. It is from Walmart. It is the Great Value brand, but it's good. So nothing special about my coffee day, but it is very flowery. So enjoying that. So
nice.
What are you drinking over there?
I'm on the road. I'm in Albuquerque, right? So I went with a good old Starbucks. Caramel macchiato, my favorite. I have a weakness for sweet coffee, and so I sweeten this with honey, and it's delicious. So yeah, definitely love the caramel macchiato.
There you go. Yeah, viewers of this show are not unfamiliar with the Starbucks brand. We do show there. That's my on traveling spot. I can get to a Starbucks usually on the show.
Yep.
All right. If you're out there watching us, please let us know in the comments. Drop any questions over there. The links to Singenius's channel is actually in the description of both Facebook and YouTube. So make sure you go there and subscribe to that as well, because it's some great videos we'll talk about as we go through. But also let us know who you are and where you're watching from, so we can say hi to you and things. So, and if you have any words of wisdom to throw at Singenius, please do that as well as the baby knight he can get.
Sure. Yep.
All right, so you mentioned this. So you said 2013. So you've been doing this almost 10 years. So you're going on 10 years now.
Yep.
Like for you, what's your? Obviously, the goal is showing off what we do, right? Do you sort of have mentalities difference of where you're shooting for the people, like for the viewer, versus shooting for us, the fighters? Like, do you do different things?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. Yeah, I think I approach this from a couple different angles. One of them is as a documentarian, essentially, right? Documenting, the fighting and what people do, and providing that back to all the fighters and everybody, so that they can see themselves. Obviously, it's great to have videos of yourself. You can share with your family and say, hey, this is what I was doing this weekend. but you can also, and I've been really happy to see the videos used as training tools. And I've heard, the kingdoms will do reviews of the videos after the events and go through tactics and things like that. And I think that's really good because it's not many other ways that you can easily, see the battle and see the formations and see the movement of everybody to really be able to analyze it and do, and do fight reviews and battle reviews and everything. So I think that's really great. And then, like I mentioned, in a promotional kind of sense, in putting this out before more people so that they can see it. I think that's important. I always put all my videos on YouTube for free and make them available as widely as I can. I think this wouldn't really be possible for me to do without something like YouTube or other online video hosting services. So the fact that that's become possible in the last 15 years or whatever is really important, because like, would I be handing out DVDs of something had I done this in the past, right? It's not really feasible to do like this, to distribute to this many people. And so I don't look to YouTube to make money. I look to YouTube to distribute. And so it's just a distribution channel for me, and Facebook as well, and some of the other Twitch here and there. I use some other services, but really it's about getting it out there to as many people as possible. And so, and it really has very little to do with me, other than I'm the one capturing the content, but really it's about sharing what, people in the SCA do and letting more people know about it and giving people a record of things that they've done.
Right. So I think that last part, you just, there's a whole other thing I want to touch on that. Like, I love all the, like, you're just giving all these little bits to talk about. Having that record, I think, is the biggest thing for what we've seen with a lot of what we've been doing the last years in the SCA online things. And yeah, you're right. We've seen a lot of our fighting from the sidelines. We've seen it even from some helmet cams and things like that, but we've never seen it from that angle. And getting to watch that and getting to look back, especially because we don't, so Meridian doesn't have, we want to have a war culture, but we don't have a large war culture. It comes and goes between crowns, but it's because I think we can't view it like that as much. And also we don't have this sort of daily training that they would have, in medieval times or Roman times or whatever. So we're sort of going out there as the amoeba. Meridian is often been called the amoeba of the war field, because we just sort of go and hit things with sticks. But I think having the swarm, yeah. I think having that view, though, let's just look at it and go, okay, well, here's what we could have done better, right? And I don't know if it's gotten anywhere yet. It will eventually get somewhere if we have a crown, that starts picking up that idea a little more. It's a fantastic idea, because we do that. We see so many shows on fight analysis with Coach's Corner and whatnot, but none have ever done analysis on the war fighting side. And I think we could do that.
Right.
Technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it is. It's a great tool for that. I think only one time have I really seen a group like that kind of do a live stream of a battle review type thing. But I agree. I think it really is a great tool for that. And these drones are getting cheaper, smaller, safer, quieter. So there's lots of things that are making this easier to do. And in a situation like this, where it's a nonprofit organization, so it's not really a commercial activity going on here. So lots of people could do this and could help and support like that. So yeah, it's a great tool.
So a question coming in from our audience member, Arthur from Meridian. What's your favorite event to film on a drone? What was talk through some of your favorite stories from drone filming.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll put Gulf Wars out there as a particular example. That was a recent one for me. It was the first time I'd ever been to that event. And most of my filming has been on the West Coast, so it was nice to go out somewhere else and be able to see, how the SCA battles happen and events happen elsewhere. That's really cool. I was happy that I was able to, get permission through the Constabulary and make sure that I was able to have proper permission to go and fly. They can't, some of the marshals came up and checked with me and made sure that I had proper clearance and everything, and I did. And so that was nice. And I appreciate that there is a path for that to happen. I think some events have just outright banned drones, and I understand that. But I think there's a lot of potential value that can be brought, both, like we're saying, to the participants and to the organization. So yeah, I would say for now that Gulf Wars has been my favorite most recently.
It's a good event, man. I'm looking forward to Gulf Wars this year, and hopefully get to see you and your drone there as well, doing a little more stuff. When you're filming at events like that, obviously you're focused on the battlefield. Is there ever a concern with what's around that? So how do you determine what you're filming and making sure you're not catching like the shower house that's over there or somewhere like around
Sure.
that?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So yeah, I've gone through a few different kind of perspectives on that, I guess. Primarily, I film heavy fighting because I want to be as the least intrusive to people's medieval experience as possible. So I'm conscious of that, and so heavy fighting is loud and noisy, and so I think it's as we've talked, it lends itself well to a view from the sky, and so that's primarily where I'll film. Commonly, I'll try to do a pass over an event to capture all the campsites, but I'll do that from a high altitude so that I'm not getting any real details. And it'll usually just be a pass trying to stay away from flying directly over the tents and find some way to kind of view from the edges. So at Great Western War, that's nice because I can go right along the lake or the reservoir and get a great view of everything. And so I've got some really beautiful shots that I've done over the time from that view. And then, yeah, I think just being conscious, like I've offered at Gulf Wars, I offered to the event staff that if there was any desire to have, something formally covered from the air, that I would be able to do that. And so mostly I think people probably don't want that. And so I'm kind of more sensitive to that. And the one other thing sometimes that I have done recently is a photogrammetry flight. And that's where you're at a high altitude taking a large number of photos that are then mosaicked together to create a map of the entire site in one image. It can have things like elevation details. It can create a 3D model of the site. And so that's been helpful for site planning and space utilization at sites. I know West Ontier, for example, has taken that image and used it as their site map now, which I think is great because, yeah, it's a simple way to have a real accurate picture of the event location and be able to kind of, do your overlays with all the camp locations and everything, kingdoms. So yeah, I think I try to be really sensitive about that. But I like to find ways to give a view that is as, least bothersome to people as possible.
I can see the accuracy of the mapping. I guess I didn't see the Great Western War map, but I can see the accuracy of the mapping would be drastically different with an actual image versus the hand drawn one we've done probably for this.
Well, and as we know, land allocation can be a challenge, right? And knowing how much space you're allocating, and so being able to have an accurate and you can get it scaled, and so that it can be scaled down to measurements that you can use for planning and everything. So yeah, it's a great tool for that.
Excellent. Yeah, that would be definitely looking at like Great Western War, the layout for that, which is much more open field concept, and you're having to square out spots versus like Gulf Wars is easier because there's obviously landmarks that have been there for a while, and there's more pocketed. It's a little less effective for that, but for the ones that are a little more open field, that's super useful. Interesting. I had not considered that concept, but thank you for that. So we had somebody recommended we should do a film festival with tactics commentary in the future. I think that's a great doing like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 with some of your drone footage would be really fun. Actually, I have to talk about that for next year. Question from Baroness Luxia out in the West Kingdom. How would you recommend someone getting started with falconry filming? So what's your sort of like day 1 to day 100 process?
Sure. The way I would recommend, if you've never flown a drone before, the best thing to do is to get a toy drone. You can buy them for $50 online from Amazon, $100. And because generally the controls are the same, from a toy drone to the big commercial ones to the ones we fly with goggles. So once you start to get the muscle memory for what the different controls do, that's the first hurdle, is knowing what's going to happen when you move the sticks. So there's that part of the learning process. Then you can step up to the larger drones, and generally those are the ones that will have cameras. But you don't want to crash those because they're expensive. Right. And so that's why it's good to learn on the little ones. You can even do it inside your house. So you can fly inside when the weather's not great or something. And then after you've worked up to the larger ones, one of the nice things about the larger ones is that they have the GPS. And so when you let go of the sticks, it's going to stay in one place and just hover, right? And so that's a really nice, if you get a little nervous, you're going near a tree or something, you can just let off the sticks and the aircraft will stop. And basically put on the brakes, and then you can decide what you want to do, right? So that's a nice thing as you get to the larger drones that have cameras. And so that's the basics of actually learning how to operate them. The next question that you have to do, there's a couple steps you have to do with the FAA, depending on the size of the drone. Like the ones that I use for filming are about this big when they're folded up. But this needs to be registered with the FAA. It costs $5. It's not that big of a deal, but you got to register and you got to put your registration number on it. So that's the kind of legal side of it. But then, as a recreational pilot, you can fly and film, things like SEA for not anything that's not a commercial activity, a recreational flight. If you were interested in doing anything more than that, then you need to look into getting certified, which I have done. It's not that hard, but there is an unmanned aerial system certification course that the FAA has set up. And you'll go through and take a test. Once you pass the test, it covers basic drone maintenance type of things, but it also covers how to understand aeronautical charts and understand airspace. That's one of the biggest concerns that the FAA has, is managing airspace and making sure drones aren't interfering with manned aircraft. So you go through that process and you can become certified, and then you can be a commercial pilot and you can make money. You can, do commercial projects. It also gives you the authority to fly in more spaces, more areas. You can even request authority to fly in controlled airspace near airports. To some extent, there are limits there, but as an example, anytime I am going to fly a site, I will check the airspace, and there's an app that the FAA makes called Before You Fly, and you just open it up and you can see what the airspace is, where you're at, and if you're authorized to fly there. If you are authorized to fly there, then you need permission, depending on where you're at. At an SEA event, for example, you may be clear to fly by the FAA, but that doesn't mean that the site will allow you to take off or land from their property. Right. And so the SCA and any event hosting organization always has the authority to control their land where the event is happening, and can restrict that how they see fit. They do not have the authority to control the airspace. So in theory, if some reporter, commercial drone pilot wanted to cover the SCA and didn't necessarily have permission, they could fly from outside of the area into the area to cover it. That's just kind of something for people to know as they sometimes wonder about drones flying around. Basically, the FAA controls the airspace, and so they're the ones who decide what can fly in an area or not. But takeoff and landing, you got to have permission. So I think once you have the skills, and then whether you're flying for recreational purposes or commercial purposes, and then you can cover wherever the event you want. So I think that's kind of the progression from starting out from nothing and learning to fly, and then knowing where and when. And I would offer to anybody who is interested in that to reach out to me, and I would be happy to give them pointers or point them to the website where I did my studying for my test and everything. There are resources out there, and it's a really fun thing, because once you have that commercial certification, you can fly in all kinds of interesting places, and potentially do it for business too as well. I do real estate footage sometimes, where I'll fly drones through people's houses to cover them, and so there's a lot of interesting options.
Did you fly through their houses, like inside the house and things, or just like
they're pretty expensive houses, but you fly something like this. Okay. Where it's enclosed and it's got like a little padding, right? This is what you fly around people to. This is, we call these kind of a cine whoop or a cinema, and the whoop term just means that these got these ducts on it that protect the props. And so there's smaller and bigger versions of that, but so you fly something like that, and you can go right through, the kitchen, up and down the stairs and everything. And it's a nice way to, show off your real estate.
That's cool. I had not considered that. So in doing your you discussed permission, and I think that's a big thing that people would talk about. What's your process been? Any goods or bads with that? Have you had like any negative feedback from the SEA about that?
Everything in my experiences in the SEA has been good. I in a certain sense, was doing it before. Well, the FAA didn't step in to regulate anything until 2016, 2017. And so I was doing this before that. And in the beginning, I was careful to talk to, the royalty at that time and kind of make sure that they didn't have any issues with it. And I think because I have been taking safety very seriously, and I've been respectful about how I use the drones, I think that I'm kind of a known entity in that sense, and that has allowed me to operate fairly freely on the West Coast at Great Western and on Tier. I've tried to fly at Potrero one time, but there's so many trees there that just, it's the certain sites It doesn't really fit. It's not really so yeah. And I think and then at some point later, the SCA started to and like Great Western Site specifically made a rule states, kind of saying that drone use is restricted. And I helped them actually, come up with that, the language to write that. But, and so then would make sure that I was still cleared, and basically I was kind of told, yep, we know you're a known quantity and we're good with you. As another example, I know, Penzik, for example, has a no drone policy. I'm hoping to go this year, so I'm hoping to get permission. We'll see. I was happy that with Gulf Wars, I was able to go through the event staff there and was able to get permission and was able to give them some great footage. So I think that, the SCA should have a policy that should restrict, I think, just generalized drone use at large events, just mostly because you want people to be a known thing. You just don't want somebody out somewhere flying a drone around and you don't really have any way to talk to them or communicate with them if there's concerns. So I think there should be a process for basically permission to be granted, on a case-by-case basis. So, and I think generally, you have to start with a more restrictive position by default, and then, on a case-by-case basis, evaluate, allowing people authority to fly.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's why the first question I asked was regarding the shower house, because when I brought this topic up to a friend of mine, that was their first thing was, well, I had an interaction with the drone thing, and it flew over our shower house one time, and they have an open top shower house, which is not a problem ordinarily until you have a drone above it,
Yep.
And they didn't care, and it wasn't really bothered. Whatever, it sort of did a flyover like you do, and probably didn't see anything anyways. But there would be concerns if there were kids involved or other people around, or people who are less concerned. I can see that being an issue. So yeah, having it more restricted, I think, is smart to start with. In allowing that in case, there's always the thing that can cause problems, and somebody gets a power trip on them. But I think for this case, it's a better option. Yeah,
and it just having a process for that, that's where they're tracked and it's known who it is and things like that. That's important, and for reasons like you've expressed, I think it's important that there's a way for there to be a communication, and it's not just a one-sided thing where somebody is just doing something without any involvement of or feedback loop from the people that are actually flying around.
Right. So one of the things you mentioned I think you put a post out when you put out videos from I think it was from Great Western, that one of the downsides for you is that you don't get to fight while you're filming, right? So for you, like, I guess how do you balance that personally as a fighter, as a knight, as like you want to be on the field? How do you pull back and go film? Because I know it's a service thing, right? What's your process there?
It's evolved a bit over the years. It used to be that I would just basically dedicate a day to filming, and that would be my non-fight day, and I would just film. But over time, the missed fighting time I'm primarily a war fighter. That's what I love, and that's primarily what I'm filming. So it was always a kind of personal sacrifice to be able to do that. But I also I love the view, even if it's not of me. I love seeing it. I love the types of coverage that I can get, and so it is rewarding in that sense by itself, and kind of intrinsically rewarding. And then more recently, I've done where I've instead of taking the whole day off for filming, because to some extent, I don't know that every battle always needs to be documented. I mean, there is an argument to be made for like record keeping or something. You have a record of every battle. That's lovely. But also, I've so more recently I've alternated where I'll fight a battle and then I'll film a battle, and I'll fight a battle, I'll film a battle. And that's nice at an event like Great Western, where we do commonly do like Alden style battles, where there's a number of battles back to back to back, and some of them with archery and some of them without. And so I can kind of alternate there. Sometimes I will be a little selfish and fly when the archers are on the field because I'm a spearman. And sometimes I like to not be assassinated by the archers all the time. But I also like to cover the archers too, because they deserve footage as well. So that's been more commonly my kind of method, is to rotate. And I like that because because if I wasn't doing that, I wouldn't be on. And then I'm not going to fight at all. Even if I run out of battery or something breaks on my drone or something, I probably wouldn't take the time to go suit up. But if I'm already in armor, then it's good. I'll just go and alternate. And so I like that. It allows me to still get in some fighting even on those days when I'm filming as well.
Well, it gives you that breather between fights too. It's not a bad plan. So
that's nice. Yep, totally.
So you mentioned the noise earlier too, and so I knew you were at Great Western. I knew you were filming. I even saw you filming. I at no point saw or heard your drone. So as a fighter, it had zero impact on my day, which was kind of cool in the fact that I knew it was there, but I could not actually fight. I didn't go looking for it specifically because I was trying to fight. But
sure.
It was not impactful, which I think is great in its idea. Because I've seen people with the helmet cams, and we'll talk about your helmet cam stuff in a minute too. I've seen the cameras on the field, and so you see those, and they're a little more obvious. But at no point saw your drone, but then watched the footage later and went, oh, look, there I am. And was able to follow me because but I didn't see the drone.
Yep.
So that's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, they've gotten smaller. When I first started, they were a fair amount bigger, and so therefore heavier and therefore louder. And as the technologies progressed, they've gotten smaller and lighter, and then they've made an intentional choice to try to make them quieter. And you can even sometimes purchase particular props that are designed to be even quieter. And ultimately, my theory of drone use is use the smallest and lightest drone you can to do what you want to do. It'll be cheaper. The batteries are cheaper. Usually you can fly longer because it's smaller and lighter. And so, and it's safer. And then less obtrusive. So I think that's always my kind of approach, is to try to use something that is going to be, as most out of sight as possible. And then I think a little bit about it is just how I use the drone at Great Western. Great Western's a nice site because it's almost always the same. They vary the battlefield a little bit, but it's in that same place, same section of the reservoir area, and it's bordered by trees, and so it's a real consistent site layout. And so I've learned over time kind of how to maneuver the drone there and how to stay away from marshals and things like that who are not in armor. And generally I'll only fly over people who are in armor. There are rules with the FAA about that, about operating over people. In our case, all the fighters are in steel helmets, and so the risk goes way down if there were any kind of incident. But that I take that seriously, and so I am intentionally trying to position the drone so that it's not directly over people a lot of the time. And so in a certain sense, you might not see it if you're fighting on the field because of that, because I'm kind of to the back or to the side and trying not to be super close. I do like to get pretty low, so I'll be at 20 feet sometimes, something like that, because you can really see the detail of what's going on. But sometimes I'll be up at 50 feet, and at that point you can, it starts to get real quiet. You can get the higher you go.
Yeah, I can see you want to catch a stray spear by accident going, all of a sudden you got a drone.
Well, and the archers like to pretend they want to shoot it down, right. All these kind of things. I always tell them, if you do that, you're not going to be on YouTube. It's pretty simple.
Sure. Yeah, I can see it make for one cool shot, but that's about it. Don't shoot the drone, actually.
Well, there was in Germany, there was a drone there at some historical event where they didn't get permission from the fighters or something. Somebody speared it. So there is a history from that.
Which, hey, if it's not supposed to be there, then take it down. That's the thing.
Sure. Yep.
But make sure you talk with your people first. And actually, speaking of that, so Master Aslak from Artemisia, so apparently brought a drone to an event, test flew it before the event, but still had to deal with a never-ending stream of people coming by to tell him it wasn't welcome at the event. So you've
Mm-hmm.
obviously talked to the people running the constabulary and the site staff. Have you
Mm-hmm.
had issues with the populace coming to you at all?
Um, I have not had anybody like, and when I'm in the air, come to me and give me negative feedback. I have, I think, part of that is because I'm careful about what I film, and that's one of the reasons that I film the battles. Is that you can barely hear the drone over the battle at sometimes,
Yeah.
right? So it's it's very unlikely to be a nuisance to anybody. If you're flying any other time, or maybe even, I would like to film rapier more, and I will, but even there it would be louder and more obvious, right? And so I think that's an important consideration. And I would be as considerate as I could be if someone came up and said that to me. I would probably go fly somewhere else, or not fly, right? I don't want to disturb people, and that's important to me. So it's also why I kind of limit the use, and I'm not flying for long flights other than doing the battle coverage. Like I said, when I fly over the campsites occasionally, that's usually just a quick flight, maybe 5 or 10 minutes from a pretty high altitude, so you can't really hear it much anyway, so it's unlikely to disturb anybody. And then it's done, right? And so I'm not having it in the air for an hour or something throughout the whole sunset time or something like that. So I think that's part of it, just being considerate to people. But I think they have the right to object, right? I mean, I don't have me as an individual, I don't think we have just carte blanche to be able to go wherever we want, right? It's an organization of people. This is a group event, group activities, and we should be considerate. And so I think maybe a conversation could be had with that person to understand, do they have a particular concern? Is that something that can be accommodated and still be able to use the drone? Or is it just, they don't like them at all? And there certainly are people like that. And I've had experiences with those people outside of the SCA for sure. People who will come and try to tell you the law and where you're allowed to fly, where you're not allowed to fly. And in general, most people don't actually know that law, because it's somewhat obscure to drones, and a lot of people don't understand the airspace rights, that ultimately a drone is an airplane or aircraft and is considered the same thing. And if someone were to shoot it down or with an arrow or with a gun, that's actually a crime. And so there are people that have been punished for that, right? So, but it should never get to that, right? So I think just working with people where you're at, and if you've cleared beforehand with the event staff, then maybe that person could be explained to them, and maybe they need to have a conversation with event staff to say, this is not something that I'm okay with happening, and and
Right.
they're fine to have that opinion.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, and I've experienced it some with even just doing some of this filming at events, and so I make sure when I set up, I'm in
Mm-hmm.
somewhere that's
Mm-hmm.
slightly secluded, and say, hey, I'm going to be doing this
Right.
here. If you don't want to be involved, please go elsewhere
Yeah.
for this hour or whatever. But I can see where
Mm-hmm.
it's a little hard to avoid a drone flying around when because it's not stationary.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great advice. Just talk to your people, and this needs to be a conversation in general about what we do. I think that's a great way to
Mm-hmm.
put it.
Yep.
All right, so shifting topics a little bit. So obviously we've got the drone footage, but also you've got some helmet cam stuff, right? That I've seen out there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about a little
Yep.
bit of that. What's your sort of how did that progress, and sort of what's your process with that?
Sure. Yeah, that's nice. I had seen helmet camera footage forever, just like I think a lot of people have. But for me, I was always struggling because the helmet cam footage was, just moves so much and is just the view of what they're looking at, and sometimes that's great for that individual, like as a record of their experience, but it doesn't really cover much other than what they're focused on. So when I came across 360 cameras a few years back, I realized that they could be a very interesting helmet camera. And that for me has been the difference. I've used 360 cameras for several years as a helmet cam. And they're kind of goofy because you got a little stick kind of camera off your helmet or something. But because it's a 360 camera, it not only captures what I'm looking at, but everything around me. And so if someone is near me fighting, they're going to be captured in that footage. And then when I post it. There's multiple ways you could post it. You can post it as a 360 video, or you can edit a actual kind of regular 1080p, what they call a reframed image out of it, where you just you can pan the camera around wherever you want, the view basically, in your editing process. But if I release it in the 360 mode, anybody who's watching it can use the controls on YouTube, and they can pan the camera around. Yeah. Or they can sit on, yeah, that's a great one when they do it on the phone, and then you can turn it, rotate around. Yeah. I think that's great. So yeah, so then the person that's behind me or something, they can get, see themselves fighting too. And I think that's really cool. And the 360 cameras have built-in stabilization. So it's not just following my head view the whole time. There is a way to have it follow my view, but with a stabilized movement. So it's never really jerky. Like a lot of the helmet camera footage kind of can give you motion sickness because it's moving around so fast. And this kind of prevents that. And so you get a real stable, smooth image that you then as a viewer can pan around and see what you want and zoom in and out. And that's really cool. And so, they're a little bit more expensive and a little bit more fragile. I think I'm on my third one now, but over a number of years. And I think that it's worth it, right? It's a risk worth taking. I also wear them to play like airsoft BB wars, right? So it's another risky place that I take it. But that's what I have it for. It really is. That's the most that I use it for, is for this helmet cam stuff. And I think it's really great. Yeah. It's just such a different view. And then finally I get video of my fighting, which is wonderful. Right. That's a challenge when I'm the one usually flying a drone. So then I get, kind of that in for myself. I get documentation, evidence of record of my fighting, and then I can go through and edit it. And I like to kind of do music video type edits. And it really it lends itself to that. And so, yeah, I felt it's a real great way to augment the coverage that I've been doing in an innovative way. And again, in a way that I think reaches out to new people because it's different, and it's, a new technology that hasn't been around. And yeah, it's people love it. From all the feedback I've got, it's been really positive about it. People love being able to look at themselves and watch. They'll come over and fight by me sometimes, so they know they're in the video and stuff, which is cool. Yeah, so it's fun. I really like it. I think it's a good, add on to what I do. I could, fly for a battle and then put on the helmet cam and fight, and then I can have two different views. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I could see the let's go to the camera, and like I want to go fight with Sijiz because that's where the camera's at. I could sure. That's funny. Mm-hmm. Okay, so so how do you? So you said you're on your third camera. That's not terrible. How do you keep it safe and not getting stabbed all the time? Because I would break a dozen of those. I couldn't do it.
Got to be good.
Okay,
it's on my head.
Fair enough.
It's on my head on my right side, right, which is my spear side. So you gotta come in and you gotta kill me, and I have a 9-foot spear, so I do try to keep people away from me. Sometimes, obviously, people get in, and people actually have been pretty nice. I've had people hit me just below it, like clearly that they were aiming on that side, but then not hit the camera. Yeah. I have had it get hit and knocked off here and there. I've kind of moved to using an aluminum frame for it so that it's pretty strong, and then they attach kind of with GoPro mounts to your helmet. And so typically if it gets hit, the mount will break. And then I commonly will have a little leash or something on it so that if it gets knocked off, I don't lose it, because I have dropped them in the middle of the battlefield here and there. And I'm like, where is it? I was at, I guess it was at West on Tier maybe this year. And an archer shot it off my head. That was amazing. I'd never seen that before. They shot the camera off my head. I don't know if they were doing it on purpose, but they definitely knocked it right off. And it was on a little lanyard there. And yeah, Sir Thorfinn is like, hey man, they got you. It's pretty hilarious.
Did it make for a cool video? I need to go find that video shot, because do you see the arrow hitting it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go find that.
And like, yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah.
That's really neat. And I couldn't do that. I would be way too distracted by the thing on my head. I'll be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
I could not do it. Also, in your words of "get good" is what you just told me. Is how do you not die, Cal? That's the best nightly advice I've ever heard, Sijiz. Thank you for that.
Yep. Yeah.
You get one white belt.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Well, and it's weird to have this appendage, off your helmet. We're already kind of have a bunch of stuff hanging off us, but yeah, like walk through things or something and kind of bump it on stuff, I end up usually just checking my shadow to see if it's still there.
Right. I get that. I had a thing. Oh, I was gonna commend your video editing. That's what I was gonna do. So, as someone I've done some video editing. I'm not a video editor. I live stream, so I don't have to edit. That's literally why I do live streaming versus video stuff.
Yeah, I understand.
Talked to Alexia and them. I did some of the editing for stuff we've done before, and I'm not great at it. So I looked at your editing. I was like, man, this is impressive. Your 360 cam stuff even better. So kudos to you for that. I couldn't do it. I've done it. Went, nah, I'm good. Thanks. Let's see. So get through my comments real quick. I think that's all I got, man. This is. I was pulling up your channel to make sure there's nothing I missed. Oh, you've done some. Okay, so you talked about war stuff, but you've also there's some stuff from the Crown tournament on there as well. So what's your your tournament fighting stuff?
Sure. Well, yeah. Most of my fighting career, I have heavily focused in war fighting. I have focused here and there on tournament fighting as well, but to a lesser extent. It's something where I'm refocusing now more on my tournament fighting. But in a coverage sense too, I have been live streaming where I can our crowns, and you mentioned live streaming. I totally agree. The editing, the capturing the footage is one thing. The editing of the footage is another challenge. And I have ADHD, and so sometimes getting through the editing is a chore, especially because lots of times I want to put music on it, so I have to find the perfect song to go with the video, and it's a whole thing. Live streaming is wonderful in the sense that it's in the can. When you're done, it's done. And so that is really, for me, that makes it so much easier to get the content out, because I don't have any of that delay around trying to find music or trying to edit it. It's just out to people, obviously, when it's live, but then I try to do it through services where it's recorded as well, so it remains available. And I have been trying to do multi-camera coverage of our Crown tournaments primarily. And that's an interesting technology challenge. One, to capture it with footage, but to live stream it and actually have signal from the places where we have our tournaments and actually get that out. It's been an interesting challenge. I've tried a couple different approaches. I had a kind of high-end bonded cellular modem, dual cellular modem that I was using for a while, that would take two cellular modems and combine the signal. That was great, but the bandwidth every month was like $300 a month, so not really sustainable. Here and there, the kingdoms would cover it, and so that was nice. So we have that. I'm now trying to use Starlink as a kind of newer option, lower cost. It's like $100 a month to have Starlink. And so far, I've had kind of hit and miss on that. I think I need to kind of expand my streaming setup a little bit and the power supply. That's the other challenge, having signal, but then having power to run the gear. The more gear I add, the more power and battery capacity and stuff that I need. And so that's the kind of next hurdle for me, is to try to use Starlink effectively to be able to live stream our tournaments. And I find that just kind of very interesting that, we send our historical content up to a satellite to then beam it out to the rest of the world to see. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we are definitely in the modern Middle Ages is what we are.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, I love the Crown footage you put out from last one, and I'm in parts of it, so that would make it even better. I was like, oh, that's me. But I think having that footage, whether it's the war fighting or the tournament fighting, is great for what we do, right? Because there's so much we can get from the cell phone cameras and things like that, but there's so much more we can get from, I'll call it professionally done footage, right? Your stuff is very, very professionally done, even though you're not getting paid for it. We appreciate your service. And I know there's been a couple dozen times where I've seen somebody say, "Oh yeah, hey, you've seen this SCA stuff," and they share me a video and it's one of yours. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that guy. I know that guy," and that's cool. I say we definitely appreciate what you do, and I want to see more of it. And I'm hoping this conversation and there's been some comments out there about it. We'll spread that. We do have one more question, and I'm hoping it's a loaded one from Luxia. So, how do you pick your videos, Sinjin?
That's a good one. That is a good one. So I basically I started using Spotify relatively late, a couple years ago. Prior to that, I would use SoundCloud, and my process was a little different then. But since I've been using Spotify, I've trained it. The Spotify algorithm is amazing. And I've trained it to, for fight music is one of the types of music that I have. And so I have some playlists where all throughout the year, I'm listening for new music on Spotify. I'm very much about finding new music in general outside of the SCA. So it's kind of a obsession that I have, and so I'll log songs into my, a playlist on Spotify that I keep, my fighting music playlist, something like that, and then after I have captured the footage, and I've kind of edited it down to what I want. I know how long it is. Then I'll go through that list of songs and just try to find a song that is, similar length to the video that I'm trying to do, and then has this right kind of energy for the video, and that varies. Some of the videos are longer, some of them are shorter. So there's a lot of different options there, and I probably have like several hundred songs in that playlist. And I add more every year. And so I try to use the newest music that I can when I put a video out, because I have sort of a DJ background. And so I like playing music that people haven't heard before. And so if I can find a kind of new fighting song, The Score is a group that does a bunch of good stuff recently. Then I'll flag it, and then I'll find it and I'll put it in a video. Yeah. So and that is definitely, a kind of obsession of mine, and to the right music to go, and it'll be hard for me to put a video out because I can't find a right song to go with it. So, and one of the nice things about helmet cam footage is that the audio is great. Like with a drone, you got props. There's no good there's no good audio. So, but with a helmet camera, you get the raw audio from the field, and I love that. And I don't have to worry about trying to find a song unless I want to, which is nice.
Have you ever had any raw audio you've had to edit out for various reasons in your helmet cam footage?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sometimes we're, before the battle starts, talking trash on the sidelines or something. Yeah. Right. So yeah, definitely. Yeah. I try to be conscious of that. Definitely I want it, not only myself, but anybody else. I don't want to get anybody embarrassed.
Right. I won't ask you to single anybody out, but I can think of a few people I might go, oh, this is that guy. Well, I'm not gonna throw a Thorfinn under a bus or anything, but I could see a Thorfinn saying
it could be.
Sorry, His Highness. Let me not just disparage the dog.
Be careful.
That's right. Oh man, I love. Like I said, it was great meeting you out there, and great getting to meet a lot more of the Westies, and the culture out there is really interesting. I really enjoyed that, and getting introduced to this. Like I said, you were at Gulf Wars, and I guess I missed the drone there completely. Getting to see some more of this and see a different side of the SCA, right? I think seeing from above now is a whole different side of the SCA that we haven't experienced. So we appreciate you for that. So, all right, I'm gonna do a couple of show plugs and we'll do some final thoughts. So, hang out just a second. Cool. All right, coming up next on Ask the Knights Live, actually. This Tuesday, we have Sir Leotov from the West and Sir Volric, now in Meridies, previously of the West, will be on Ask the Knights Live being interviewed by Countess Honora. So it is the Squire interviewing her two knights. So check that out over on Ask the Knights Live. And this Thursday, back here on Kal-bardr's Corner, we'll have the KK Productions Holiday Special, hosted by myself and Lady Kisa, and special guests to include Ask the Knights Live, SCA Coaches Corner, and a whole bunch of others that I'm not going to try to name because my brain is not working this morning. Apparently, I don't have enough coffee in my system. So check us out Thursday. That is going to be probably about 2 hours of just ridiculousness and us hanging out and enjoying, recapping the year. Tune in for that on Thursday. Also, if you want to support Kal-bardr's Corner and KK Productions and all the channels that we produce and support, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions, and join the grand wall of patrons. Awesome rewards out there. And awesome just getting support what we're doing here and all the shows we support. Last but not least, if you want to support us on Redbubble, look us up there. You can search KK Productions and buy a sticker of one of your favorite shows. There you go. And let me put out Singenius's channel real quick. I'm going to put it in the comments as well. Okay, so hopefully that doesn't eat the link. But if it does, I'm also going to put it in a banner because sometimes YouTube likes to eat links. So we will put it here as well. YouTube.com/user/Singenius is Brown Falcon Productions. Singenius, do you have anything coming up you want to promote other than your channel there?
No, not that. But what I will say, there's also a Facebook group, Technomancers Are Us, that is about live streaming SCA type events and coverage. And so if you're interested in that or you do that, join and check that out. Just about sharing information and knowledge and, designs of how we set up systems to do this and stuff. So I think it's a great place to collaborate.
I'll drop that link as well. Give me just a moment. And in that group as well. There you go. Let me put that there, cool. And we'll put it up on the banner just to get the random string of letters. But there you go. Technomancers Are Us. There's some great stuff in there, and it links to my stuff and Cindy's stuff, and a couple other things in there as well. So check that out. Awesome. All right. So final thoughts on the bird's eye view, on sort of your journey into drone falconry. What's your final thoughts?
My final thoughts is that I think we should have more. One of my other terms for it is dragon riders. And I think we need a dragon riders guild where people can share and collaborate together around that. I think not only is it a great service to the organization, but it is a kind of, as we've seen, there is some can be some conflict about it and concern. And so, we should be able to work together and share best practices and make sure that we're using this kind of tool the best that we can for the organization.
I completely agree. I think this is one of those new things we find with live streaming drone footage, helmet cam stuff. Every time we add something new to the SCA, it brings up some new thing we've got to deal with. I think that's another new thing. And those of us doing things like this should definitely work together on this. So if you're interested in that, look up Syngenius and Brown Falcon Productions, or look up the Technomancers Are Us group. Join us in that journey. But for now, folks, that is an empty coffee cup. Syngenius, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate the time, and thank you all of you for watching. But until next time, this has been Syngenius and Kal in Kal-bardr's Corner. Have a good day, everybody.
See ya.